Welcome to the Giraffe Social Media Podcast. It's what social media managers are talking about. I'm Tyler, and today I'm joined by Chloe and Christy.
Hello.
Hi. Coming up on this week's episode, we'll be playing a fun game of Netflix quiz, talking about the do's and don'ts of community management, along with the new YouTube Theatre for Business feature that has just been released. Stick around to the end of the show where we'll be answering some of your burning DMs. So first, just to kick it off, how are you guys doing? How was your week going? Obviously, we had a bank holiday on Monday, so it's a bit of a shorter week this week, which is lovely.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm all good, thank you. Definitely keen for the weekend, surprisingly, even though it technically only just began this week. Yeah, we love that. How was your guys' bank holiday weekend? Did you get up to much? Anything exciting or just chilling out?
Mine was really chill, actually. I love having that 3 days because it does make the next week feel so much shorter. But it's already Wednesday, so I love that. But yeah, mine was really chill. Thank you.
Yeah, mine was good too. I feel like a long weekend just makes Sunday less depressing, or makes me feel like I don't have to spring into action on the Saturday. I can sleep in. I'm not wasting my day because of an extra day. But you're so right. I feel like a long weekend also makes the next week, even though it's shorter, I'm still I can't wait for the weekend. God,
literally.
I'm flat out. So
the gift that keeps on giving, a long weekend.
Definitely. If only we could have it every weekend. A nice long
weekend.
Definitely. I was actually chatting to one of my clients about that. When was it? Yesterday we had a meeting, and he was telling me, because he's based in Israel, and he was saying that their week starts on a Sunday, and he was like, it's so completely different. And I was like, can you imagine if our week started on a Sunday instead of a Monday? I mean, Mondays are bad enough, but then you start on a Sunday instead. No.
Not happening.
No.
Definitely. All right. Well, to kick off this week's episode, we're actually just going to be doing a cute little fun Netflix quiz. So I hope that you ladies have brushed up on your knowledge. It's just going to be 5 little questions just to kind of test your Netflix knowledge, because I feel like for me especially, I don't know about you guys, but I spend all my time on Netflix now anyway, so it'd be interesting to see what we know about the platform that we use so much.
Yes.
All right. There is unfortunately no prize at the end of it, so
I'm still feeling competitive. Still feel it. You're going down, Chloe. You're going down.
Winner will just get the title. That's what we'll go with. Alrighty. So the first question is, what year was Netflix founded? So is it A, 1990, B, 1994, or C, 1997?
Oh, I think it's 97.
I was going to go B, but I really don't know.
It was indeed 1997. Yes!
Oh, Chloe.
Come on, Chloe. Okay, question 2 is, what was the name of the first Netflix original feature film? And for an extra mark, what year was it released?
Oh, God. Feature film?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea.
No, neither.
I feel like it's something recent though, but I can.
Could it be The Kissing Booth or something?
Is that? I don't think so.
Oh, I feel like if Tyler's saying no, that's answering the question. The quiz host is like, no.
No, girl.
Oh, God. I have literally no idea.
No?
Go on.
No, I'm afraid not.
All right, I'll break the news to you guys. It's actually a movie called Beasts of No Nation, and it was released in October of 2015. Never heard of it.
That was on the tip of my tongue.
You were gonna say that one completely.
Yeah.
That was way before. I thought it was a much more recent thing.
See, me too. Yeah. When I saw that answer, I was like, 2015. Was Netflix? It sounds awful. Was Netflix even around in 2015? But it started in 1997, so clearly it was around. All right. So question 3 is, which of the following reality shows is not currently on Netflix? So is it A, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, B, Jersey Shore, or C, The Real Housewives of Atlanta?
I'm going Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
I'm gonna go Jersey Shore.
It is B, Jersey Shore.
Oh, Chloe, you are
Come on,
killing
Christy.
it. Honestly, I've never seen. I would absolutely be watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians on Netflix if I knew it was on there.
It's only like the like the early seasons though. So it's kind of boring.
Yeah, it's like the first, I think,
sure.
like 5 seasons or something like that.
Right.
Out of their 20 million seasons that they made.
Yeah.
Okay. Question 4 is, what is the current top-rated Netflix series? Ooh.
Like Netflix official series?
Yeah, so like a Netflix-made series.
Queen's Gambit. Is that Netflix?
I don't actually know.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
Mine is the same. Like, I don't know if it's Netflix, but I'm gonna say You.
So apparently, as of July 2021, the top-rated series on Netflix is BoJack Horseman, which I was very confused by. I was like, of all the Netflix series that could be top-rated, but apparently that's the number one. Yeah, I've never watched it. I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen it. It gives me like a Rick and Morty vibe.
Yeah.
And I've never watched Rick and Morty either, because that's just not my thing. So, but yeah, that's the top-rated series for July of 2021 and onwards.
Interesting.
All right. So our 5th and final question is, how much money does Netflix make on average per year?
I'm
so bad with number questions.
I feel like I should know this. I did used to have a client that was like in the Netflix realm, so I'm just gonna go. I don't know, 200 mil. 200 mil.
Yeah, Christy,
I'm gonna double that and go like 500, just over double it, 500 mil.
Yeah. So as of their 2020 end of their financial year, Netflix had raked in $25 billion.
Oh, do you know what? I knew this because Disney was like 26. And I was like, surely not. So I was going to say 20 and I was like, nah, 200. But I still win, so...
Yep, it was 2-0 to Chloe.
Oh my goodness,
all that trash talk at the beginning as well, Christy, aren't you embarrassed?
I know. It's karma. It's honestly karma.
Damn it.
How embarrassing.
Oh,
humiliating.
It's okay. We can have a rematch.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we could do it. You can come back, make a comeback, Christy, don't worry. Alrighty. Well, yeah, that was just to kick off this week's episode, a cute little Netflix quiz. So if we're moving on to our main segment of this week's episode, we are going to be discussing the do's and don'ts of community management. So I think community management in particular is quite a interesting topic. And it's something that I think we have spoken about in the podcast previously, but a lot of like brands and companies and businesses, like, I don't think they see the importance of it necessarily. And community management is such a big thing in the industry that we work in particular. And I think it is just, it's something that you need to focus on when you are working with your brand and your business in particular as well. So just to give some context for the listeners on what community management is defined as. So it's basically any interaction with your brand, business, company's community. So whether that's customers, whether that's competitors within the industry, whether that's other brands that you maybe want to partner with, whether it's influencers, just any sort of interaction that you have with them on social media. So if it's liking posts, commenting on posts, resharing some content, replying to any sort of direct messages, responding to any customer queries, just managing your community in a nutshell. So this week's topic is basically focused around some of the do's and don'ts of community management, because obviously there are best practices when it comes to managing any sort of community that you're working with. And as a brand that is representing yourself on social media, it's important for you to know what you should and shouldn't be doing. So yeah, just to kick it off, kind of going into this week's main topic, do you guys have any sort of like examples of community management from like maybe a brand that you've worked with or something that maybe you've seen yourself that you would kind of say is either like a very much a do or very much like a don't. Like, you should stay away from this type of interaction. Christy, anything from you?
Yeah, I love okay, so this is one company, but like it's the overall thing that I love. So Innocent Drinks, I think they're really good at community management, but I love any kind of company that can do that quite laid back. Obviously the community manager, whoever's doing the community management, is being told like you can pretty much, as long as you stick to the guidelines, you can pretty much do anything. That like laid back, really engaging with the community and going out there and sort of engaging with other random companies. I love that kind of thing, because it's those kinds of companies you see, you know, when you go on like any post, it could be I think it's, I don't know if it's more common in like with English companies or UK companies, but you'll go on like any post and you'll see certain accounts and you're like, oh my god, you're everywhere. I love that kind of community management where you build that kind of name for yourself.
Yeah, that reminds me, I like obviously TikTok is massive at the moment, and this wasn't an example I had brought to the episode, but I just thought of it when you were talking, Christy. Is on TikTok, I think it's like the Marvel TikTok account, and obviously the trailer's out now, but everyone's kind of been waiting for the Spider-Man trailer all year, and so all the comments on any video that they posted was like, when are we getting the Spider-Man trailer, like when is it coming? And whoever was running like the community management on the account was just so good. Like, they were literally like replying to people saying, leave us alone, like please leave us alone. Like, it was just so funny. And then obviously because it was like really, I guess, like shady and like cheeky, people were like talking about it and like sharing it more. So I just thought like that was like really funny. But when I was doing like a little bit of research before we jumped on the podcast, I thought one like really good example of like community management is like not ignoring or creating opportunities to like create communities as a brand. So like brands should be or can like join in on conversations, whether that's like replying to messages and stuff, or they can create conversations. So I think this culture of sharing is really important when it comes to community management, and the Harley Owners Group community membership is a really cool example of this. And basically Harley Davidson just built one of the world's best community membership clubs, and it's kind of like a little group where their customers come and exchange ideas, and they like share tips regarding their Harley Davidson motorcycles. And I think you get this a lot in kind of like the automotive industry, but this is so like applicable to like skincare brands or like lifestyle brands. And I think it's just really clever. Like, you could create a Facebook group. I think the Harley Davidson one is like an actual membership website, but like it could be as simple as like a Facebook group that you like create for your closest like customers. And I think one of our clients in the past has done this as well, where they share like new launches, and they used to sell like crafty bits, so people would share their DIYs and stuff. And I just think that's really clever, and maybe like not the first thing that springs to mind when you think of like good community management.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think with community management as well, I mean, obviously we'll get into the specific kind of like tips and tricks that we kind of use in terms of that. But I think it's important for you to try and find that niche, and like separate yourself from other brands, because you know the market is so saturated in terms of, you know, different brands that are offering different things or similar things, and in a way that you can do that in terms of community management is, like you said, Chloe, like creating a community you know, that is unique to specifically what you're offering as a brand, or like you said, Christy, also just like having fun with it, like, you know, having that like tongue-in-cheek humor and going a bit like out there, so that you give that shock value to your customers and consumers as well. So yeah, there's loads that you can do with it. But in terms of kind of any specific like tips and tricks, I know from my side, when I do community management for a brand that I'm necessarily working on, I'm very aware of the brand voice that we're working with. So like, for instance, if it's like, you know, a skincare brand that's really like young and fun and has a really like youthful kind of audience, you are going to be managing that community a lot differently to maybe like a brand that's in like the property industry, and they're like an investment company who are like targeting older people who are like wanting to buy property or are interested in that sort of thing. So I think that in particular something that is important to remember, just as kind of like an umbrella term, is to know your audience, to know who you're communicating with, and who you're kind of speaking with. But in terms of like specific, maybe like do's and don'ts, do you guys have any sort of like tips in terms of that? Chloe, any sort of maybe specific don'ts of community management that you should just stay away from?
You know, I come prepared with a list of don'ts. I kind of have, I mean, aside from the obvious, which is like, make sure that you're adopting a brand tone, like you just said, I guess the three main pointers that I would have is, first and foremost, don't ignore or delete criticism. I think that's like our first instinct, especially maybe as social media managers doing things on behalf of a brand, is we see something negative and our first response is to automatically like hide or delete that comment, which in some cases where it's just like straight trolling, that's fine. But I think if it's like a genuine angry comment from an angry customer, the chances are that they're not, if you delete that, they're not going to suddenly forget that they're angry. If anything, they're really going to persist, and that's going to make them even more unhappy that you're like going out of your way to ignore them and make sure and like devalidate their experience. So I guess the best way to go about that is to reply to the comment, like acknowledge the issue, and then kind of take the conversation elsewhere and handle it privately, because obviously you want to let everyone else who's kind of watching on know that you've acknowledged this complaint and that you want to help them, but they don't need to see it all roll out in front of them. So I think that's definitely like the number one thing not to do, and that's ignore or delete criticism. The second one is kind of maybe people will be 50-50 on it, but I think trying not to use automated responses, and this is really like easy for larger brands to do, or now like Instagram and Facebook have like really easy ways to set up these automated responses. But I think it kind of, it leads towards dehumanizing your brand. And I know that personally when I message a brand with like, whether it's a complaint or a query, like an inquiry, and it's automatically straight into the automated, like, is this what you want to know? It kind of like, I don't know, it annoys me a little bit because like one, maybe my option isn't there, and it makes me feel like they only want complaints if it's within these like set parameters. But I really just think like personality can make or break your relationship with your customers, and I think having a real person on the other end just kind of helps aid whatever the issue is or whatever the inquiry is. And sometimes like it is easier to have the automated response come in first, but if you're a smaller brand, I think kind of try and stray away from that and keep it as personal as possible. And then my final one is, and this kind of goes against, you know, what we've been saying that we love about community management, but I guess it's more of a thing to be aware of, and that's that sarcasm and humor don't always translate online. So, you know, our favorite brands like Netflix and, you know, all the rest of them that have, you know, these witty comebacks are awesome, and we do love that. But I think you kind of need to assess the situation first. And again, like if it's a genuine inquiry or complaint, maybe that's not the best time to use your humor, because it might not translate through the typed as opposed to spoken word. But yeah, if the opportunity is there and it's kind of like they're being cheeky with you and you can be cheeky back, I think that's really good. I saw an example online where someone had tweeted Wendy's, and they were like, like, why are you going to let IHOB take over your turf? Like, why are you so chill about that? And then Wendy's was like, oh, we're not really worried about burgers from a company that couldn't even handle pancakes or something. So I think that was like funny and like a little bit of banter. But it doesn't always translate. So just kind of pick and choose where you're going to be doing that.
Yeah, 100%. Oh yeah, I think I probably agree with every single one of those things. And I think being aware, like you said, just of what the audience that you're communicating is kind of feeling, or how they're responding to what you're putting out there as well, is an important aspect when it comes to community management, because you can, like you said, you can be sarcastic and funny, but if it's misplaced, it can cause an absolute whirlwind, which we have seen sometimes before, where, you know, you haven't necessarily responded in the right way. I know I've had it where I've kind of interpreted a comment and I've been like, oh, like, I'll respond like this, and then the customer maybe takes it the wrong way. But yeah, just being aware of the people that you're communicating to as well, and ensuring that you're keeping that kind of like balance in terms of, you know, who you're talking to, what you're saying, how you're responding. It's a bit of a juggling act, I think, for sure. But yeah, definitely. Alrighty, well, thank you for those awesome tips, Chloe. Really appreciate them. It's definitely something I'm going to steal for myself as well going forward using community management. I'll give you credit on it. But yeah, if we moved on to kind of like the do's of community management, obviously, you know, you need to remain aware, and like we've said, you need to know who you're talking to. But also there's so much opportunity in terms of things that you can do really, really well when you are speaking to your community. So Christy, do you have any kind of like specific do's of community management that you kind of like to carry in your work and stuff as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think community management, like you said, has so many opportunities within it. Yeah. So I think the first one I bought was about brand voice, but I think that's been covered because I think that is such an important thing to make sure that you're, I don't know, you create your own personality and your own persona. Yeah. So people kind of, there are certain brands out there where you see their comment and you almost know what brand it is before you even see the brand name, because it's just so them. And I think that's such a successful, it sort of means that you've done it, you've won at community management.
Definitely.
But my first main point, I think, leads on from Chloe's second point about being human. In that being authentic with your community is really important. And like you said, Chloe, making sure that you're doing it in the right way and being tactful and reading the room. But I think having that human aspect, and I think TikTok is actually a really good way to doing it on TikTok, where people can often see your face, and I think TikTok's quite a human platform, but obviously you can do it on any platform. But making sure that your community sees that there's like a human behind the brand that they can communicate with and engage with. And yeah, I think it humanizes the brand in a way that customers will want to go to them rather than some brand, as you mentioned, Chloe, that has sort of automatic replies and doesn't necessarily care about the customer. It is connecting it to customer service. People will see that there's a human behind the brand, and they'll come to you with their concerns in maybe a less mean way, which obviously looks better on your brand. It's never good to have some really harsh comments on there. So yeah, I think humanizing your brand, having a human voice while sticking to your brand guideline, your community guidelines, and ensuring that you're being tactful is really important. And I would also say that I think you touched on this earlier, Chloe, but finding new ways to engage your community is also really important, because you can have your set ways that work really well, and that's amazing if you do find those ways. And engaging, by commenting back and liking or heart reacting, they're the sort of typical ways, and they often do work really well, particularly if you do have a really engaged audience. But you can try within, I guess this ties into organic and sometimes paid posts as well, that you can really try new ways to engage your audience, like running competitions through community management, or those like heart and like if blank, or comment if blank, or those things, I think are really good at building a more engaged community. And I guess it ties in with the humanizing aspect. So yeah, I would say that there are a couple of do's. I think community management is something that can be so well utilized that a lot of brands don't necessarily jump on straight away, because they don't think it's, especially if they haven't yet got an engaged audience, they don't necessarily think it's worth doing yet. But there is only one way to get that engaged audience that sees you as a human brand and wants to engage with you and buy your products because of that, and that is through community management.
Yeah. And to jump on that thought, I think again, if a brand, starting out, maybe some people come to our agency and they say, I don't really have an engaged audience yet, so community management is not something that is a priority for me. But I think it's important to remember that community isn't just inbound, it's outbound as well.
Yeah,
and
completely.
If you don't have that engaged audience yet, go and find them. Go visit other pages, see what the conversation is, join the conversation, or reach out to people that have a similar lifestyle to the brand, messaging that you're trying to convey, and get in touch with them. Like there's so many ways. It's not just a one-way street. Like you can't expect people to, you know, be social with you if you're not being social with them, you know. It's a dead old saying, but social media is meant to be social. So we haven't already touched on it in this episode. Outbound community management is just as important as inbound management.
Yeah,
100%. I think it's also an almost organic way of tying in with your influencer strategy. If you can put the feelers out there, sort of keep your ears to the ground and find those influencers and connect with them in an organic way through community management, create that bond with the influencer you want to reach out to, even if they've got a big following, but just by commenting on their posts, getting that, you know, back and forth with them, they're probably more likely, you know, when you reach out to them, to want to work with you. So I think it could tie in that way, particularly outbound.
Definitely. Go and poach some of your competitors' audience.
Go and do it.
What comments they're not responding to, and answer it for them and bring them over to your friends. Like
you might be the one with the scandal, Chloe, not me. But anyway, yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree with all of those points that you guys have made. And I think, like we always say, you need to be proactive, not reactive. And with community management in particular, like that is something that I try and remember when I'm sort of, you know, dealing with any sort of clients or brands that I'm working with, is you need to build that audience. And the only way you're going to build it is if you put in that energy and effort, and you engage with people just as much as they engage with you as well. And like we always say, people buy from people. So you got to be in it. So yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, those are some really great tips. So thank you guys for sharing all of those with us. That was very, very insightful. And hopefully it has helped out our audience with any sort of community management questions they may have possibly had. So now we're going to be diving into this week's top social media news story. And it's about YouTube. They've brought out a new feature again. Woohoo! Well, not really a feature. But they've actually decided to open up a 6,000-seat YouTube theatre where they're planning to host in real life events, as they call it, which I find quite interesting considering YouTube is obviously such a digital platform and they're very much based online. But yeah, the physical venue is basically for them to host things like concerts, theatre performances, award shows, sports competitions as well. And then they've said that one thing that they're kind of keeping at the forefront of this new thing that they've developed is that performers can live stream their events. So if you can't necessarily attend the event in person, you can watch it via live stream, which I think is a really great idea, but I don't know if they needed to develop an entire 6,000-seater theatre to do that. Like, I feel like that could have been something that could have been implemented from YouTube, partnering with like maybe an existing company, but obviously they're kind of wanting to put their own spin on it in terms of their brand. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Would you go to a YouTube theatre to watch a live performance of someone?
I think this is so cool for so many reasons. Like, well done, YouTube. This is going to be awesome for them. I think, like, on the one hand, YouTube is already known for holding these like crazy conventions, like for creators to meet their fans. So for starters, now they can do that there and kind of really, you know, brand it, put a stamp on it. I think also like there's this emergence of influencers now becoming celebrities and like the thin veil that now stands between the two. And I think this is a really good way for like maybe, you know, someone who's, let's say James Charles, who we all know has such an angelic voice. Now he can hold his like concerts if he wants to have them in the future at this YouTube hall, and that's a really great brand partnership between him and YouTube. And yeah, it's just going to open some really great opportunities for like creators to, you know, meet their fans in a realistic way whilst like working directly with YouTube still. And then I guess finally, like YouTube is kind of turning into a little bit of a streaming service in itself now as well. Like we've got Apple TV, we've got Netflix, but now there's YouTube Originals, which at the moment is usually just like docu-series made about creators, but who knows in the future they can start creating feature-length films, and then where are they going to premiere these films? At YouTube Theatre. So I think this is a really cool idea for them. And I think you said at the beginning, like YouTube is kind of like this strictly online platform and it has thrived so much throughout the pandemic for obvious reasons. Yeah. But now it's kind of like in a way that most brands are kind of jumping online because of the pandemic. YouTube is doing the opposite and they're saying we've done so much together, like so much connecting through webcams and YouTube videos and such. Let's meet IRL at the YouTube theatre. I don't know. I just think this is like a really, really cool
smart
thing.
Move.
Yeah. And if had they have one in London, I'd be there.
Chloe would be the front of the line,
I
ready.
Yeah, I just think it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I also love the idea. Where is it? I didn't actually read whereabouts it is. I assume it's America.
I think it's in
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I wonder what the ratio of like YouTube performers or influencers to actual, I don't really say actual artists, but you know, like typical singers and musicians, as opposed to say James Charles. I wonder what, you know, if those big time, like say Harry Styles or, you know, the bigger singers, I wonder if they'll end up performing there. I'd be interested to see what that ratio is going to be like. But yeah, I also love the idea. I think it's amazing for their branding. Like you said, Chloe, everything is really kept within YouTube. Like I know you mentioned, Tyler, that they could have that sort of partnership with an existing venue, which I also think would be a great idea. But I think it is amazing to have everything within the YouTube space. I think it is a really clever idea. And I mean, I guess we're yet to see how it's going to play out, but I think it's going to be really successful. And I hope it's successful. I think it would be a really cool idea. And I look forward. I would definitely, I mean, not that we can go because it's in California, but I'll definitely be watching the live streams
but
for
yeah,
sure.
You can plan a trip. There's live stream.
Exactly, that's the point, Christy.
You can attend it.
I will be there.
I think the live streaming will work really well. Like, to give an example, I know this year, Niall Horan held that live streaming event in the Royal Albert Hall. And all the proceeds like went back into the touring industry. So it could be like a similar situation to that, where they could get like mainstream artists into live stream should, you know, things worsen and we go back into a lockdown or whatever, or even just like as a new kind of, you know, not everyone can get tickets to an event, not everyone can make it to the venue. So I think live streaming, you can make money from that, both for the artist and for YouTube. Like if it's kind of like a little fee that you pay to both. So I'm excited. It's a virtual event.
Same. I think you bring up a really good point, actually, of the fact it does make concerts much more accessible, that live streaming. For those with disabilities who can't necessarily get to a concert, or like you said, like if they can't get a ticket or they don't necessarily have the money to buy a ticket and get the travel up there, it definitely makes concerts more accessible. And of course, 100%. You can watch it from your own bed, and nothing better for me, honestly.
The dream.
Honestly. The lazy person's concert. But yeah, honestly, I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they've kind of hit that gap in the market as well, in terms of like, we're going to open a theatre and do real life events like post-pandemic, because obviously everyone is like biting at the like nub to get out of the house and like go out and see people and go to events and stuff. So I think, I probably agree with you guys. It's a revolutionary idea. Well done, YouTube. So this week's question is actually about a negative review on Facebook, interestingly enough. So it reads, I recently received a negative review on Facebook and I'm not sure the best way to respond. Do I do it on a public forum or take it into a private conversation? I want to try and help this customer as much as I can. So, funnily, it links into this week's episode and community management. Do you guys kind of have any sort of initial ideas off the bat on how to answer this burning question?
I mean, hopefully you've tuned into the episode because we've right?
And watched it already.
I mean, to go back to a point I made earlier, I think super important to like validate that person's experience, like validate the reason they've given you a negative review and really like take it in. And yeah, you don't necessarily have to have it out with them in a public forum, but definitely acknowledging it. Apologizing is super important. Like the customer is always right. Everyone always has, there are different views of the story, but I think, yeah, it's important for brand credibility and to like keep that relationship with your customer to, apologize, acknowledge, and then kind of ask for their DM, ask for their telephone number, ask for their email, whatever it is, and then take the conversation privately, especially if it's a review. Like a negative comment, you can, if you so please, you can hide it, delete it, whatever. Obviously, it's more important to, apologize and acknowledge it, but you can't do that with reviews, can you? They stay there forever. So
yep,
super important to acknowledge everyone and resolve it so that that person can either change their review, take it down, change their opinion, or let other people know, because as you said, you may get 100 customers coming to you, but you're the only brand that they've got a complaint for, so they're going to hold on to that forever, and a negative experience like sticks with a customer and changes the way they view your brand forever. So that's my take on it. I don't know, Christy, if you have something different.
No, to be honest, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I don't disagree with any of that. I think it's important to, I guess this is only with comments, because like you said, you obviously can't hide reviews, but it's important to know the difference between like an actual genuine negative concern or review, and then there's also obviously trolling or just like sort of hating for the sake of it. I know that I've got a client that they do often get negative comments that you kind of do have to hide because they become a bit personal, or they're sort of just for the sake of it, which sounds terrible, but I think it's important to know the difference. And there are comments that you probably should hide if it's not necessarily to do with the brand or like an actual complaint. But no, I think Chloe, you covered everything perfectly there. I don't have anything to add or disagree with.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree. Definitely. So that was our top DM for this week. So hopefully we answered your burning question and helped out a little bit in terms of that. If you'd like to be featured in next week's episode, then make sure to slide into our DMs over on our Instagram page @giraffesm. Well, that's all we've got time for today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or follow us if you're listening on Spotify. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's episode, so make sure you reach out on social media and let us know your thoughts. We've been Giraffe Social Media, you've been amazing, and we will see you next time.